What's up, guys? Welcome back to the shop. In today's video we're going to be making a knife with ball bearings again, but it's going to have a little twist to it this time. As you know, I like to experiment with patterns, so this time I'm going to try something a little bit different. First things first, we're going to clean our bearings, make sure they're nice and clean, no residues on it, to help with our forge weld. And with our ball bearings nice and clean, we're going to start up with our canister. I have these 5 pieces of 52-100 round stock, and I'm going to put one in each corner and one in the center. This is going to give us a different pattern, a different look to our billet. Hopefully towards the end we can see that there's a difference. If not, then I'll know for future reference not to do this again, because it was a pain to get those round stocks in this, especially the one in the center, sit up straight. And here I'm pouring some steel powder into it. It's high carbon steel powder with a little bit of nickel. That way it gives it that shine and that contrast to the other high carbon. And we're sealing up our can. As always, first thing I'm going to do is crush from top to bottom. That way I get a nice solid forge weld on the inside without running the risk of popping off the caps and throwing our ball bearings everywhere. Now that I got that done, I'm just going to reform it back into a rectangle so we can hit it with our angle dies and ensure a solid forge weld. As you can see, the caps are already starting to pop off the ends just with the angle dies. So if I start with the angle dies, those ends will pop off and I'll have very hot ball bearings flying around everywhere, and that is the last thing we want. Now that the cap is loose, I'm gonna remove it with the press, and I'm gonna struggle for a while to get this can out. As you can see by the fact that I'm holding the billet, the inside billet, with the tongs instead of holding the can, the inside is actually completely loose from the can, but it's a little bit stuck on the inside. So it's just gonna take a little bit of back and forth to try to get that guy out, but it does come out eventually. And after that very beautiful clean release, we're going to start working it down slowly. I'm going for about a 1 inch by 1 inch rectangle, and that's because I'm going to give it a twist. And if it's 1 inch by 1 inch, it gives me a pretty good stock to work with afterwards. Ever since I upgraded the press and fixed it up, it's been working very well, and it's actually a lot stronger than it was before, even though I didn't actually add any actual strength to it. But since it's not losing power in any kind of weird twisting that it used to do, it's actually been working out pretty well. So I am very happy about that. And now that the billet is drawn out, I'm going to start crushing in the corners. That's going to help minimize the possibility of getting any kinds of delams or cold shuts whenever I twist it. And now for the twisting. It's a 1 inch by 1 inch bar, so it's actually kind of hard to twist. But as long as you get it up to really high heat, it'll work like butter for a certain amount of time. Once it cools off, you're going to slowly feel how it gets harder and harder. At that point, just throw it back in and get it nice and hot again. And now that I got my twist done, I'm going to use my straightening dies to straighten out the billet and get it ready for cutting in half. Now the reason why I'm cutting in half is because I'm going to use half for this project and the other half for another project that I'm going to be doing down the line. I've been meaning to make some sideways drawing dies, but I haven't gotten to it, so I have to use these very aggressive ones that I don't really like to use because it's easy to overpress. But I'm being extremely careful not to do that, and hopefully I can make some less aggressive dies here in the near future. And now that I got the rough width that I need, I'm going to start working it back. I'm using the flat dice to get a nice straight edge back on there. And what I'm actually making today is a Nakiri knife. The Nakiri is basically a vegetable razor that's used in Japan, and I just thought it would be the best knife that I can make besides a cleaver that would be able to show the pattern as the best that I could. That's my primary reason for choosing the Nakiri over anything else. I could have done a cleaver, but it wasn't going to come out right. I didn't have enough material for that. So I opted out for making a Nakiri. And here I'm just working out the tang little by little. And I actually have a lot of leftover material for the tang, which I already knew I was going to have. But that material I wasn't going to be able to incorporate into my knife because that was the part of the billet that I left straight whenever I twisted, because I needed to grab onto those ends to be able to twist it. So basically I could have cut them off, but I decided to leave them for using in the tang. Here I'm drawing out the knife, trying to get a little bit more width on it, and I'm shooting for about 7 to 8 inches. Here I'm just going to cut off the excess of the tang that I don't need because it's getting in the way, and I'm forging out the heel. The reason why I'm forging out the heel on this knife is because I want to make sure I get enough height on the heel of the knife, and I'm trying to pull it back ever so slightly because whenever I was forging it I accidentally pushed it down some, and that's gonna take away some of the width of the knife and some of the length of the knife. So I'm trying to recuperate it by hand forging it back out. Fortunately, I can go ham on this knife without much issues because for the first time in a minute, it's not a sand mine. Since it's not a sand mine, I can work it as much as I want without fear of, having core issues like I did on my previous knife. And here I'm just going to start working out the edge of the knife, slowly pulling it out and thinning it up. I don't normally do this because I can run into issues of making it too thin, especially when it comes to a Damascus. If I was doing a force to finish, it wouldn't be an issue. But since it's Damascus, and you'll see that I run into this issue down the line, I do have some tiny small areas that I have a little bit of scale still in there. Well, forge marks, not necessarily scale, and those stay in the knife because if not, I'll end up over grinding the knife and making it too thin in that spot. And here I'm just gonna put on my maker's mark. And here's a look at the knife now that it is fully forged. It looks a little off, but we're gonna fix that on the grinder. Here I'm taking a diamond wheel and I'm just getting off the majority of that scale off the knife to get it ready for our 2x72. Here I got the profile already marked and I'm just slowly grinding up to the edge. I have a lot of tang material. I'm gonna end up cutting some of that off down the line, but I'm gonna tell myself that it's better to have too much than to not have enough. And we quench. Here is the knife after our temper, and it actually came out pretty straight, so I'm pretty happy with that. Not too many issues. And I'm taking it to the surface grinder and I'm just gonna surface grind both of the top sides to make sure that they're even on both sides before I start doing my bevels. A lot of people that start knife making believe that forging is the difficult part, but actually the difficult part is all the grinding that you have to do. You can fix any forging mistakes on a grinder, but can't fix grinding mistakes on a forge. That made no sense, I apologize. Back on topic, pretty much what I'm trying to say is grinding skills are incredibly important and they're very, very difficult to acquire, so that's something new. And here I'm taking it to the disc grinder and I'm just straightening out all the crappy lines that I left on it while I was on the 2x72. And making sure my edge is nice and straight. And I hand sand. It took me about 4 or 5 hours of hand sanding to get this guy up to 800 grit. And now that it is hand sanded and ready, we're going to start on our handle. This is a block of black liquid micarta I'm going to be using for part of my handle. Another part will be a stabilized burl dyed in green. It's very pretty material. And I actually get my ratios wrong, and I don't really like the overall look of my handle. I like the shape that I come up with, and I like the feel of the handle, but I feel like I did the block a little bit too big compared to the wood. But hey, that's how I know that I don't like my designs. And next time I'll be sure not to make that mistake. But as you can see right here, it is a pretty beefy boy. I should have just used half of it, but oh well. Here is the stabilized green burl that I'm using. It's very pretty once you get it all oiled up. It has a very beautiful pattern on it and very beautiful burl. Here I'm doing something that I don't see very many people do, but that's probably because they don't show this part of their process. And I'm super gluing my two pieces together. I could be using epoxy to do this, but epoxy takes a lot longer and super glue is pretty instantaneous, especially with that spray. And that accelerator helps it be pretty much even more instantaneous. And it actually helps a lot. The bond between the two pieces is actually very strong, and I've used it on different kinds of woods, and the wood will break in that area. The fibers of the wood will break before the glue actually breaks, so that's pretty cool. And here I'm using a height gauge and scribing in some lines for reference points that I'm going to be using for grinding my handle. I always like to grind my handles with the front part narrower than the back. A lot of people do that. It's very comfortable in the hand. So that's the first thing I'm going to do, is I'm going to start working in those angles. And with those angles already worked in, I'm going to start doing my profile on my handle. This is a different kind of profile that I don't really use, and I'm trying it out. I see Will Stelter does this kind of shape to a lot of his handles, and they look pretty comfortable. I've never held one of his knives or checked them out, but just by looking at some pictures, just roughly what it looks like. So I'm gonna try for my version of it, and it's just inspired by the ones he makes that are very beautiful. If you don't know who he is, you should definitely check him out on his YouTube channel or on Instagram, where currently he is on a crunch trying to get his master bladesmith test knives done and ready for Blade Show Atlanta that's happening here in about a week or so. So he's definitely on the crunch. He's making some very beautiful pieces. So you guys should definitely go and cheer him on. I don't think I'll ever get my master smith or do the test or anything, but it does look cool and challenging, so I definitely recommend going and checking him out. I'm not too sure whether I care to be a master bladesmith or not yet. Maybe I will in the future, maybe I won't, I don't know. But for now, I just really do this for fun because I enjoy it. But I don't think I could work on a knife for, weeks on end and trying to make it absolutely perfect because, oh man, I don't think I have the attention span for that. So here's the knife out of the etch, and it's looking pretty good, and we're moving over to our coffee etch. I like to coffee etch basically every Damascus knife that I make because I really like that jet black look that it gives it. 52-100, it doesn't get quite as dark as 1084, but other than that, it's definitely does make it pop a lot more and give it a lot more contrast, and I'm definitely a fan of that. And now it's time to go on ahead and glue up our handle. Since our handle is already finished, it's just about pouring in some epoxy with some black tint to hide any mistakes that I made, and just stick that sucker in there and try not to make too much of a mess while I'm doing it. And our paper test. I've gotten a lot of comments saying, hey, what's the whole point of doing a paper test? Oh my god, it cuts paper. Wow, bro, if it cuts paper, it's sharp. That's all I'm showing. That's all it means. It's not that deep. And here is a look at our final piece. I really like the look of the Damascus pattern in there, but it didn't really pop out much more than what it usually does, so I'm not sure if it was really worth the trouble of putting those 52-100 bars in there. Overall, it was a fun build. I really appreciate you guys for watching. Like, comment, and subscribe, and I will catch you guys on the next one. Peace.